People-first organizations will win in the future of work.
Your only real asset is your people.
We all want purpose-driven work.
HR-led organization is the
I'm
future.
sorry, but leaders don't lead empty desks and empty shop floors.
Welcome to the People Strategy Leaders Show. I'm your host, Sri Chellappa, founder and president of Engagedly, and a serial entrepreneur in technology, films, and music. This is where we talk to people leaders, business strategists, and organizational savants about leading in the time of change. What is working, what is not working, and more importantly, what we should be thinking about. Stick around to the end of the show. We will reveal how you can be our next guest. And now, let's engage. Hello, and welcome to People Strategy Leaders Podcast. I am Sri Chellappa, your host. I am today with Michelle Griffin. Dr. Michelle Griffin is an entrepreneur and industrial organizational psychologist. Her primary role is the CEO and founder of Griffin Resources, which she founded in 2019 to provide innovative fractional HR, payroll, and recruitment services to small and mid-sized companies globally. In the past, Michelle served as the head of HR at ConnectWise, a billion-dollar IT software company, and as the director of HR at Homes by West Bay, the largest privately owned residential construction company in Tampa Bay. More recently, Michelle also co-founded and serves in operations for 4 other organizations for IT hardware supply to MSPs, investment funding, software creation and licensing, and commercial charter flights. Michelle's leadership journey seamlessly weaves together business expertise and a global perspective, making her a standout figure in the ever-evolving landscape of executive leadership. Well, thanks, Michelle, for joining the show today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we were just chatting a little bit earlier about, your background in finding the right people for the right role. And one of the things that really resonated for me was happiness at workplace. And you said that there is a strong correlation between people who are happy at work, they do better. Can you talk about a little bit more about exactly what your finding has been and your own observations have been on this topic?
Yeah, so the main point of, obviously people who want to work, enjoy their work, and they want to make money, obviously. But it's more fulfilling for them when they're working for a company that aligns with their cause, and they become fulfilled at work. They're happy to be working. Kind of goes back to the old adage that if you do something you enjoy, you never work a day in your life, which in many situations, in some capacity, is true. And so if companies focus on hiring the right people for the right role, meaning they find people that are wanting to do the work that they're being hired for, they stay fulfilled in that, and it aligns with their career aspirations, their education aspirations, and they take their personal goals and align it with the company's goals, ultimately the company will win out on that. And then when the company makes sure that the people remain happy and fulfilled, ultimately their work is being performed better, it's being performed faster, more efficiently. And, that's also when people will start to go above and beyond, the exact opposite of the quiet quitting we're hearing a lot about now, because people are saying they don't feel like the companies care about them. They think that they're just a cog in the wheel. They're just there to make money for somebody else, but it's the opposite if you can treat them in a way that that's not true, that they're valued and respected at the organization. And in turn, they're going to make money for the organization. They're going to, provide better customer care for the clients, or, the actual end user of whatever that company does.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge trickle effect, when everyone is, treated in a way that provides, happiness and fulfillment.
So happiness and fulfillment is actually a very important topic, because I talk about that a lot on my top topics of discussion in my podcast, as well as my own thought leadership pieces that I write. The one thing that I sometimes struggle with is that aligning what the manager or the organization thinks will make an employee happy, and what the employee thinks that will make them happy, because sometimes they both could be wrong, right? Because the organization is trying to assess, okay, this role might make this person happy based on what they've said or heard from this employee. The employee might have said or said something that may be misinterpreted, or the employee might have expressed something that might be they think will make them happy, but it's not necessarily the case, right? Because we all try to do things that think will make us happy, and then we realize, oh, you know what, this is really not making me happy. I don't want to do this job, or I don't want to do this career. I don't want to be in this, city, or whatever choices we make in life, right? Right? How do you make sure that you get that alignment right?
There's a few ways to do that from a scientific perspective. There's a lot of assessments out there that can help people to get past what they think they want and get down to measuring what's called your natural disposition. So it's kind of more of as the core of your behavior and the core of your personality, what attributes actually shine through for your work performance. And there's several of them out there. One that I use in my organization just because of the ease of use and the accuracy and validity of it is predictive index. But there's many of them out there, but that one is really easy to read the results, and it's very simple to take. So it's not very invasive to get accurate results. But basically what it's measuring is twofold. And it's really interesting to look at the results. It will measure your natural disposition to say, this is how you show up in life. And then it also measures how you change your behavior based on what you think others want from you. And then you can see how misaligned that really is. And that's important to look at because you can see if someone is an exact opposite or really changing themselves to show up at work every day, it's going to be exhausting. It's going to create burnout. And that's when you really want to be able to say, maybe you should be looking at jobs that more naturally align with yourself. And, some people are like, well, I'll just do it for the money because they want to make more money. And eventually that's going to lead them to not be happy and fulfilled because they went so far outside their comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah. We've used predictive index quite extensively in our organization as well, and we are partners with them as well. So I was surprised how easy it is to take that. And then what surprised me really about that was how close it was to reality, at least that you understand about yourself. And that is one way definitely to align, I guess, on the behaviors and the values. The role could still be a challenge though, right? I mean, you could say, the values align, you're a strategic thinker, we want a strategic thinker in this role, but the role might be something that requires different skill set, or the skill set that really challenges them that they're not really prepared to do, right? So
and that's where predictive index helps with the job match. So if you are accurate in creating your job match and then you overlap the personality across the job match, you should be a little bit closer aligned. And what's nice about predictive index is you can look at the alignment of someone's natural disposition against the job match to see if it's going to cause them really far outside their comfort zone, and versus if you also look at other parts of the charts to say, well, it's closely aligned with how they already show up at work, but that's going to eventually cause problems for them. And it comes also down to the fact that people can change their mind. Their lives are going to change, especially with family situations, new children, growing children, getting married, moving, economic changes, anything like that that's going to cause changes in their lifestyle is also something to help accommodate for. That happened with me and obviously several of my team members. I try to do a lot to accommodate work-life balance for my team members. And one story that comes to mind is someone that had a small child, and we had her on the phones a lot. And she was doing recruiting, she was doing interviews, and she just, needed to be more at home with the child. She was working from home. The childcare situation changed, and she needed to also be there with the child. But unfortunately, that's a small child who's making noise and crying, and she needed to either step away from work or cancel some things. And she essentially quit. And we ended up discussing why she needed to quit. She didn't have another job lined up. She just couldn't handle the workload. And I was like, well, let's just change your workload. What passions do you have? And she said she liked analytics and numbers and was thinking maybe she'd go back to school for that. And I was like, well, let's give you a job duty that takes you off the phones. and incorporates numbers and analytics. And we kind of moved her into payroll and started teaching her payroll processes. She absolutely loved it and started getting a certification in payroll. And she was still able to be the, kind of stay at home mom and, get more hours, which also helped with income and childcare. So, with just switching things, if we had just let her go because she quit versus really just discussing what makes her happy, what's going to realign with the changes in her life. And, she went on onto a different career path. She's been with me for years now.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And I think what I noticed is it really works well for, organizations that have leaders like you who really care about their team and people like that. But also I noticed it works in a lot of pockets in larger organizations. So how do you help organizations that are much bigger, let's say 500 people, 1,000 people, to really make that as part of the organizational DNA, that they take a look at that as part of their organizational culture?
That's when it really, once you get bigger like that, you have to realize it's essentially a bunch of small businesses, if you will, into smaller pockets, like departments. And that's when people say, they don't leave their job, they leave their manager. And it really comes down to companies listening to what the people have to say about their managers. And if the managers are not aligned with the culture or they're treating people differently, there was when I was at a much larger company, the with ConnectWise, that was $1 billion company,
Right.
and there was a manager that was really pushing the people to work really hard, and he demanded others of what he demanded of himself. And I was like, you can't really do that. You're a manager, that's different, or you're a business owner, that's different than the people that are performing underneath you. And you have to respect that their lives and their missions and for themselves are very different than trying to grow the business or be there for the business. And, his wife had a baby and he literally was working in the hospital room with the baby in the room with her. And he's like, I did that. Why can't other people do that? I'm like, you should never expect that of other people. You should respect their boundaries. You should expect their work life, and understand that they're going to want time off. They're going to want to take, leave of absences to be with their family and in different situations. And you shouldn't want to have to work that hard. So there's certain things where a lot of people would be, were unhappy under his management because of those things. And it's, I think COVID changed a lot of people's mentality and started speaking up about their boundaries versus just accepting it for the paycheck or for their career, or not wanting to job hop because they didn't want to see a lot of roles and jobs on their resumes and whatever their motives were. And so now it's people are, their mental health is much more of a, concern and bigger deal, working remotely, only communicating with people via computer, things like that. We get asked a lot about how to make sure you take care of people, but in larger companies, it's the same thing. Just take it down and just kind of look at the micro pieces of it departmentally, and then making sure that the managers are aligned. And when you hear that the managers are not aligned, a lot of times businesses will be like, well, the manager's a great manager, or they're, they think they only see them from the top down perspective. And then they just start getting rid of the lower level people that don't like that manager. But ultimately it's a bigger symptom of that. So a lot of companies can do 360 reviews. They can do bottom up reviews as well as top down reviews, and really start to get confidential information from companies that can help them assess what is happening that they may not notice and should have known if they really took the time to find information and listen.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, because I talk about how middle management is one of the toughest jobs, because you're managing two major stakeholders. On the top, you have top management really pushing you to achieve results. And then you have people who have their own boundaries, if you will, and challenges and personalities that you have to work with. And so you have to balance the two. And preparing managers to be successful in being able to manage those two stakeholders effectively is what will make them successful as a manager. And it's really a struggle for first-time managers when they first get promoted, because they feel this obligation, or sometimes they feel this obligation to please their manager or their leadership, that, hey, I need to now prove myself because I've been a manager now. I need to show results. Or it can go the other way, where they have these people, they were peers a few months ago, and now they're leading them. So now they have to figure out how to make them accountable for their role. So how do organizations best prepare these managers to make sure that they're not, be able to balance these two stakeholders and ultimately provide this good balance of people being happy and fulfilled at work, but also achieving the business results?
That happens quite often where people will get promoted because they did their job well and not because they actually had leadership skills. And so to be able to make sure that middle management is successful, it takes a lot of training and a lot of coaching. And that actually happened to me. And I went from being people's peers to being the head of HR and running the department. I had to hire my own replacement and then manage the team. Some people were happy about that. Some people were not happy about that. And what I did for myself was I took a 6-month coaching course to learn active listening. And I had to, I was answering to the CEO and COO of the company. So initially when I was first meeting with leadership, they would start to ask me questions and I would anticipate the question and start to answer them. And at one point they stopped me and said, let me just finish the question. You are right. That is the answer to the question I was asking, but I want to be able to hear myself ask the question. And it's important to be heard. And then once I got done with the coaching course and learned more active listening skills, by the end of that, the other business owner actually noticed and said, I feel like you're listening to me. Thank you so much. Which I was like, wow, that's a complete change of behavior in myself. So now we actually offer, individualized coaching for that specific reason. So one of our coaches is for that. I found, valuable in that. I started reading books like Leaders Eat Last. There's a lot of books out there that can help people understand how to be a good leader. And it's important to obviously know how to speak to leaders in a way that they're looking for information, which is very different than, the way middle management, I think, tends to think. So leaders sometimes, want concise information. They don't want excuses. They want results, those kinds of things. So being able to take information that is important to the middle management person and then changing it in a way that is going to be important to the leaders is necessary. They don't want long-winded responses. They don't want long emails. So you have to learn how to change and understand different personalities and different communication styles. DISC is a really good one to start having everyone take so that you start to learn each other's communication styles and things like that. So there's different ways to have, I would say, understanding how to communicate up and down. The other thing I usually try to encourage middle leaders to understand is it's a really hard mindset to get, is that if the team does really well, then the team is the one that gets the result, gets the rewards for that and the acknowledgments for that. But if the team screws up, that is also the manager's responsibility to take the blame for that. And it's like, if the team didn't have the right resources or they didn't have the right boundaries or known limitations of that, then that's also the manager's fault that the team didn't succeed. And so the middle management can also be a very thankless job because you're trying to promote other people's, their skills and help them grow their careers. And ultimately, that's what makes a good leader, is someone that can lead other people and promote them. And so that is also, to me, what makes a great leader, is someone that can be that humble of saying they did a great job. This is their reward. And when they screw up, it's, the manager realizes they failed their team in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think manager's job is pretty hard. I think you're right about coaching. We talk a lot about in our discussions on how a new manager gets promoted because they were really good at their job, but they were not necessarily the best people leader. But that's not something that's a dead end. You can become a better people leader. You just have to have a little bit more awareness, self-awareness, as well as awareness of your environment and the people you're working with. The one last question I wanted to ask, at a broad level, have you seen changing perspectives in organizations where they are focusing more around, going beyond just employee happiness, but employee fulfillment, better alignment, to their, purpose, if you will, and values?
It depends. I mean, yes and no. It really depends on the leader and the economic status. So when the economy is really struggling and the businesses are struggling, then that becomes an issue because they are focused on keeping the business afloat. And we're kind of starting to see a change in the economy that causes some concerns for business owners. And when they're focused on, money and making sure people have jobs, that's, a different, I would say if you were to think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but in a business sense, they're in a lower level mindset of just making sure they can keep the lights on and keeping people employed, and might not necessarily be focused on, their happiness and mental health and things like that. And if the company is really economically strong, then they want to put resources into continuing education. And so I have seen a lot of companies, when they're ready and willing to spend money on investing in their people, then they'll start looking and saying, continuing education is necessary. It's part of the budget. And they will make sure that there's resources available for for the employees, whether it be medically related, employee relation issues, anything like that, versus just saying, hey, here, make sure you're getting your continuing education. We'll pay for that. We'll pay for conferences. We'll make sure that your career advancement is happening for you too. So I think it definitely comes down to the economic status and mindset of the organization, and that will ebb and flow depending on what stage the company is at.
Yeah, but I do think that COVID really was a big wake-up call for a lot of organizations and leaderships to say, okay, you know what, we really need to focus more on people rather than just focusing purely on profits, because they are very related, right? The more happier and fulfilled employees you have, the more profitability you'll have in the long run as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And it definitely, and that can be a double-edged sword, is if you're focusing on people's happiness, the money will follow. If you're focusing on your clients' happiness and making sure you're providing a great product, the money will follow and stay with you. Versus if you're cutting corners and cheating people, it's going to catch up with you. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Michelle. It's been really helpful. How can people reach out and learn more about your services and the type of work you do?
Easiest thing is the website, griffin-resources.com. My contact information is there. My direct way to reach me, my email, my phone number is all right there. Same thing with finding me on LinkedIn at Michelle Griffin. So it's pretty easy to find me. You can Google me, and I'm usually right there to all my information is out there on the internet to find, and I'll hide.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Sri Chellappa here. Thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you are a successful leader or a people strategist who would like to be on this program, please visit engagedly.com/People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show, and include the hashtag People Strategy Leaders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Sri Chellappa. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. And thank you to Patrick Ramsey, sound engineer at Kalinga Production Studios, for recording and mixing this show.